Here is a situation I think we have all been in. You are watching the Olympics, maybe it's gymnastics or the 100-meter dash, or you are watching a concert pianist playing Rachmaninoff without breaking a sweat. Or maybe you are just looking at that one CEO in your industry who seems to have the Midas touch. And the first thought, the immediate instinctive thought that pops into your head is, wow, they were born to do that.
The gift, the natural.
Exactly. We look at high achievement and our brain just instinctively looks for the magic dust. We look for, I don't know, the biological advantage that separates them from us.
Which is a very convenient story to tell ourselves.
It is, but we have a stack of research on the desk today that suggests that instinct is not only wrong, it is actually a psychological trap that holds us back.
It's a defense mechanism, really.
Yeah.
And a very, very potent one.
Today we are diving deep into Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance by Angela Duckworth. And I want to be clear right off the bat, this is not just another work harder pep talk.
No, this isn't about motivational posters.
We aren't here to just say, don't give up. This is a scientific dismantling of the talent myth. We have data here from West Point, from the National Spelling Bee, from sales teams and Ivy League undergrads, and it all points to a formula for success that is completely different from what we are taught in school.
And the mission for this deep dive is to really get under the hood of that formula. We want to understand why our brains are wired to worship talent, what grit actually looks like biologically and psychologically, and then the mechanics, the actual math of how to build it.
Because the good news is, grit is plastic. It can change.
It can absolutely change. And, to really understand Duckworth's obsession with this, we actually have to start with a little bit of family drama.
Oh, this is the best part.
It's what she calls the genius paradox. And honestly, it sounds like the origin story of a superhero, or maybe a supervillain.
It's a painful place to start, but it explains everything.
It does. So, Angela Duckworth grows up in a house where the word genius is thrown around like currency. Her father is obsessed with intellect. He's constantly calculating who is a genius and who isn't among his friends and family.
He sounds like a charmer.
He was intense. And his assessment of Angela was, well, it was not favorable. He would frequently tell her, you're no genius.
Wow, straight up.
And he wasn't saying it to be mean, necessarily, or to bully her. In his mind, he was just stating a biological fact. She wasn't an Einstein, she wasn't a prodigy, she was just normal.
Which makes the irony of her career so delicious. Fast forward a few decades, Angela Duckworth becomes a celebrated psychologist at the University of Pennsylvania, and in 2013, she gets a phone call.
The MacArthur Fellowship.
Which everyone in the world knows as.
The Genius Grant.
You literally cannot script that better. The girl whose dad told her, "You're no genius," wins the official award for geniuses.
It's poetic justice.
But, and this is the crucial nuance that I think frames our whole discussion, she didn't win it because she proved him wrong about her IQ.
No, and that's the misunderstanding people often have. She didn't suddenly reveal she had a secret IQ of an 80. Her father was technically right. She wasn't a natural genius in the way he defined it.
Okay.
But he was asking the wrong question. He was asking, how much talent were you born with? The question he should have been asking, and the question her research finally answers is, how long can you stick with a hard problem?
That stick-to-itiveness is what she codified as grit. But before we get to the definition, I want to look at where this research started. Because she didn't start in a comfortable lab with undergraduates filling out surveys for extra credit. She started at West Point.
The United States Military Academy.
Specifically, a place called Beast Barracks, which sounds like a location in a fantasy novel, but it is very, very real.
Beast is legendary. It is the 7-week intensive training program that every cadet has to survive before they can even start their freshman year. And we aren't talking about a few push-ups and a morning jog.
Paint the picture for us. What does a day in Beast actually look like?
It is designed, quite literally, to break you. It is 17-hour days, 5:160 a.m. wake-ups, relentless physical drills, emotional hazing, complex mental tasks assigned while you are physically exhausted.
And no breaks, no sympathy.
You have zero privacy, zero autonomy. You are screamed at. You are corrected on everything from how you stand to how you eat. It is a pressure cooker designed to weed out anyone who cracks under stress.
And we need to clarify the who here. The people entering West Point are not random teenagers. These are already the elite.
The stats are wild. You have something like 14,000 applicants a year. That gets whittled down to 4,000 who get a congressional nomination, which is hard enough on its own.
Right.
And then only 1,200 actually enrolled. These are the varsity captains, the valedictorians, the class presidents. These are kids who have succeeded at everything they have ever tried.
So you have the best of the best, the physical
Yeah.
specimens, the academic stars. And yet 1 in 5 drops out before graduation, and a huge chunk of those quit during that first summer during Beast.
And for decades, the Army was completely baffled. They had this metric called the whole candidate score. It was supposed to be the holy grail of admissions.
Right, I've heard of this.
It combined SAT scores, high school rank, physical fitness assessment, leadership potential. It was a massive aggregate number that was supposed to predict who would be a great officer.
Logic suggests that the person with the highest whole candidate score, the smartest, fittest, most leader-like person, would be the most likely to survive Beast, right?
That's what they thought. And for academic grades, it worked. The high scores did well in history and calculus. But for Beast, for survival, the whole candidate score was useless.
Useless how?
It had zero correlation with who quit.
That is terrifying for an admissions department. Your best metric works for the classroom but fails completely in the field.
Exactly. You had guys with off-the-charts talent scores packing their bags in week 2 because they couldn't handle the grind. And you had guys who barely scraped in, who weren't the smartest or the fastest, refusing to leave.
So Duckworth comes in. She suspects that the Army is measuring talent, but they are missing the engine that drives it. So she creates the grit scale.
It's a deceptively simple test. It measures 2 things. 1, passion, and 2, perseverance. And we need to be really careful with these words because they are used so loosely in pop culture.
Let's double click on those because passion usually implies fireworks and excitement.
Right. In the grit scale, passion doesn't mean intensity. It doesn't mean screaming your lungs out at a pep rally. It means consistency of interest over time.
Consistency. So not jumping from one thing to the next.
Exactly. Do you stick with things for years or do you bounce around? Are you obsessed with pottery this month and coding next month? High passion means you have a compass that points in one direction for a long, long time.
And perseverance. I think that one's a little more straightforward.
It is. Perseverance is simply the capacity to continue effort despite setbacks. It's resilience in the face of failure. It's getting back up.
So she gives this test, this simple questionnaire, to the cadets entering Beast.
And it turned the whole system upside down. The grit scale was the only thing that accurately predicted who would survive Beast. It beat the SATs, it beat the physical fitness scores. The people with grit stayed. The people without it left.
And what was the relationship between talent, that whole candidate score, and grit?
That's the kicker. They were unrelated, in some cases even negatively correlated.
Wait, negatively. So being more talented made you less gritty.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
You could be a genius with 0 grit. You could be average intelligence with massive grit. The gift was no guarantee of survival. In fact, sometimes the most talented people were the least gritty because they had never had to struggle before. They hit the wall at West Point, and they just didn't know how to climb it.
This brings up a massive psychological question for me. If grit is the thing that actually predicts success in high-stress environments, and frankly in life, why do we obsess over talent? Why are we so impressed by the natural?
Oh, we love the natural.
We do. Why do we pay more for the gifted athlete than the hardworking one?
Duckworth calls this the naturalness bias.
Yeah.
And she references this fascinating study by a researcher named Chia Young-se. She took professional musicians and entrepreneurs and presented them to experts. She presented 2 profiles, the natural and the striver.
Person A was born with it, person B worked for it.
Exactly. Person A picked up the violin at 3 and played perfectly. Person B practiced 6 hours a day for 10 years. And then she played recordings of their playing. Now here's the trick. The recordings were identical.
Identical.
Or in some cases, the striver was actually slightly better. But when asked who do you want to hire or who has more potential, the experts overwhelmingly chose the natural.
Even with identical output, even when the sound hitting their ears was exactly the same.
Every single time. We have an unconscious bias against hard work. We prefer the magic. We want to believe that excellence is a mystery.
Why? That seems so counterintuitive. You'd think we would respect the person who busted their back to get there. It's the American dream, right? Hard work pays off.
But in reality, we seem to prefer the lottery winner.
So why do we do that?
Duckworth brings in Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher, to answer this. And his take is, well, it's humbling. Nietzsche said we mythologize the genius because it protects our ego.
Protects our ego. How?
If I look at a virtuoso violinist or an Olympic swimmer and I say, wow, they are a god, they were born that way, then I am off the hook.
Off the hook. How?
I don't have to compete with them. There's an insurmountable biological gap between us. I can just sit back and admire. He had this quote, "To call someone divine means here there is no need to compete."
That is profound. So if I say she's a genius, I'm really saying I don't need to try.
You're saying I can't possibly do that, so I won't even start. But if I admit that they got there through 10,000 hours of boring, repetitive, painful practice, well, now I have a problem. Now I have to look in the mirror and ask, why aren't you doing that?
Because if it's learnable, my failure is my fault.
If excellence is achievable through effort, then my lack of excellence is a choice. And that is a very painful realization for most people.
Oof, that hits hard. So calling someone talented is basically a permission slip to be lazy. It's a way to let ourselves off the hook.
It's a coping mechanism. It distances us from the reality of the grind. We prefer the myth of the gift because the reality of the grind highlights our own lack of discipline.
Okay, so we've established that talent is a distraction and grit is the actual predictor. But grit can feel a bit abstract, like a motivational poster in a high school hallway. Duckworth actually breaks this down into a formula, doesn't she? She tries to quantify the mechanics.
She does.
Yeah.
And this actually came out of a pretty brutal meeting with her grad school advisor, Marty Seligman. He is a legend in psychology, the father of positive psychology.
Right.
And he told her point blank, you don't have a theory, you just have a correlation. You know successful people work hard, but you don't know why or how.
Nothing motivates like a little academic shade.
Right. So she went back to the drawing board to figure out the math of achievement. And she came up with two equations that completely changed how I look at skill.
Let's walk through these. Equation number 1.
Equation 1 is talent eggs effort equals.
Oh, okay. Stop there. We just spent 10 minutes bashing talent. Now it's in the equation. Define talent in this context.
This is so important. Duckworth doesn't deny that talent exists. She's not saying we're all blank slates. She defines talent as the rate at which you improve when you try.
The rate of improvement.
Yeah, it's your biological head start. If you have high talent, you pick up the chord progression faster than I do. You understand the math concept after one explanation, not 5.
Okay, so talent is speed of learning, but the equation says talent times effort equals skill.
Right. If you have high talent, but 0 effort, you have 0 skill. 1,000,000 times 0 is still 0. The talent remains latent. It's just potential energy. It never becomes kinetic.
So effort is what activates talent.
Effort is the activation energy that turns talent into skill.
That makes sense. But having a skill doesn't mean you've done anything. I can know how to write a sentence. That doesn't mean I've written a novel. I can know how to dribble. That doesn't mean I've won a game.
Exactly. And that leads to equation 2, which is the crucial step people miss.
Which is?
Skill X, effort, achievement.
I see what happened there. Effort is in the equation twice.
Effort counts twice. That is the headline. That is the aha moment. You need effort to build the skill, equation 1, and then you need effort again to apply that skill to create something of value, equation 2.
I think that second part is where most people fall off. We put in the effort to get the degree or learn the coding language or get in shape, and then we think, okay, I have the skill, where's my trophy?
Right. We stop at the skill, but achievement is the result of using that skill over and over and over again. Duckworth uses the example of a potter named Warren McKenzie. He says the first 10,000 pots are just about learning how to throw clay.
That's the first equation, effort turning talent into skill.
That's building the skill. That's equation 1. But the achievement, his career, his gallery shows, his legacy.
That comes from the next 10,000 pots.
That comes from the daily effort of applying the skill. You have to burn the calorie twice. Once to get good and once to do good work.
There is a really compelling example in the book about John Irving, the writer. He wrote The World According to Garp and Cider-House Rules. Massive literary success, we assume. Natural genius writer. Words just flow out of him.
Far from it. He was a disastrous student. He had a C- in English. His teachers thought he was lazy and stupid. Turns out he was severely dyslexic.
So his talent variable in equation 1 was actually quite low. His rate of learning regarding language was slow.
Extremely slow. He couldn't spell, he couldn't read fast, but his effort variable was off the charts. He said that to do anything well, he had to overextend himself.
What did he mean by that?
He learned that as a writer, he wasn't a natural. He was a rewriter. He would go through 10, 20 drafts when others would stop at 1. He learned to pay twice as much attention as everyone else just to keep up.
He compensated for the lower rate of learning with a massive volume of effort.
And because effort counts twice, the math worked out in his favor. He outgraded his lack of talent. His sustained effort over time dwarfed the initial talent of his peers.
Will Smith has a great quote about this. He is incredibly explicit about not being the most talented guy in the room.
I love the treadmill analogy. He says, "The only thing that I see that is distinctly different about me is I'm not afraid to die on a treadmill. You might have more talent than me. You might be smarter than me. But if we get on the treadmill together, there's two things. You're getting off first, or I'm going to die."
It's intense, almost aggressive, but interestingly, there is actual science behind the treadmill. This isn't just a metaphor Will Smith made up.
Yes. The Harvard treadmill test from 1940. Researchers literally put young men on a treadmill at a steep angle and made them run until they physically collapsed. It was designed to measure physical stamina, VO2 max, muscle strength.
Brutal.
But they followed these men for decades.
Right. And 40 years later, when they looked at the data, they found something shocking. The time a man lasted on the treadmill was a better predictor of his psychological adjustment in adulthood than his physical fitness was. Wait, explain that connection. Why does running until you collapse predict whether you have a happy marriage or a good career?
Because the test wasn't just physical. At a certain point, your body screams stop. The refusal to quit, even when your lungs are burning and your legs are shaking, is a proxy for how you handle life's problems.
It's a measure of mental toughness.
It's a measure of your willingness to endure discomfort.
Yeah.
Do you step off when it gets uncomfortable, or do you stay on? The key takeaway, though, isn't just about staying on the treadmill in one go. It's about getting back on the next day and the next. Consistency over intensity.
So grit is about staying on the treadmill. But, and I want to play devil's advocate here, isn't that just stubbornness? Is grit just doing the same thing over and over again blindly? Because if I'm digging a hole in the wrong place, digging harder isn't going to help.
Right.
That sounds like a recipe for burnout, not success.
That is a crucial distinction. Duckworth is very clear. Grit is not just stubbornness. It is not just bang your head against the wall. It involves a very specific structure of goals. It has to be directional.
She talks about the hierarchy of goals.
Imagine a pyramid. At the bottom, you have your low-level goals. These are your to-do lists. Answering email, going to the gym, getting to a meeting on time.
The daily grind.
Exactly. These are just means to an end. You don't answer emails just to answer email.
Oh, okay. So that's the base of the pyramid.
Above that, you have mid-level goals. Finishing a project, getting a promotion, launching a product. These are important, but they still serve something higher. And the very top, you have one single top-level goal.
The compass.
The compass. This is the ultimate concern. It is an end in itself. You don't do it to get something else. You do it because it's the point of your life. For Duckworth, her top-level goal is use psychological science to help children thrive. Everything below that serves the top.
And this is where the famous Warren Buffett story comes in. I've tried this exercise, and let me tell you, it is painful. It sounds easy, but it forces you to kill your darlings.
It's ruthless prioritization. The story goes that Buffett asked his pilot, Mike Flint, to write down his top 25 career goals.
Which is hard enough already.
It is. Then he says, okay, now circle the top 5. The pilot agonizes over it, circles the top 5, and then Buffett asks the killer question. Okay, what are you going to do with the other 20?
And the pilot, being a gritty type of guy, says, well, I'll focus on the top 5, but I'll chip away at the other 20 on weekends or when I have spare time. They're still important to me.
And Buffett says, no, you've got it wrong. The other 20 are your avoid at all costs list.
Avoid at all costs? That seems so extreme.
It is extreme, but it's necessary. Because those 20 are the seductive distractions. They're interesting enough to steal your time and energy, but they aren't important enough to be your life's work. They are the reason you won't achieve the top 5.
They are good ideas that prevent great ones.
Precisely. Grit requires the discipline to say no to good things so you can say yes to the great thing.
But this brings me back to the stubbornness question. What if my plan isn't working? What if I have a top-level goal, but the way I'm trying to get there is failing? Does grit mean I have to stick to a failing plan?
No. And this is the nuance people miss. Duckworth says you should be stubborn about the top-level goal, the compass, but you should be very flexible about the low-level goals.
Can you give us a real-world example of that?
Look at Bob Mankoff. He was the cartoon editor for The New Yorker for years. His top-level goal was be a great cartoonist. That was the compass. It never changed. But his low-level goals, his tactics, kept failing.
He was rejected a lot, right?
He collected something like 2,000 rejection slips. He tried stand-up comedy to be funny, failed. He tried drawing in the style of other famous artists, failed. But he didn't change the compass.
He didn't give up on being a cartoonist.
He didn't say, well, I guess I'll go be an accountant. He changed the tactic. He swapped out the low-level goals.
So what did he do?
He realized his drawing style wasn't working, so he developed a new style called stippling, using little dots. He realized the New Yorker cartoons were intellectual, so he studied what made them tick. He analyzed them like a scientist. He adapted the method to serve the mission.
The Green Beret motto: improvise, adapt, overcome. You don't quit the mission, you just change the plan.
Precisely. Quitting a low-level goal that isn't working isn't a lack of grit. That's just good strategy. But quitting the top-level goal just because it's hard, that is a lack of grit.
Okay, so we have the definition, passion plus perseverance. We have the math, effort counts twice. And we have the structure, the goal pyramid. Now, for the question every listener is probably asking, especially if they are feeling like they maybe quit things too easily, can I actually get grittier, or is this just something you're born with, like blue eyes?
This is the classic nature versus nurture debate. And the answer is, yes, you can grow it, but we have to acknowledge the biology first. Duckworth cites studies on twins that show the heritability of grit is estimated to be somewhere between 20 and 37%.
So roughly a third of it is genetic. Some people are just born with a bit more dopamine or a bit more tenacity.
Just like some people are born taller. But that leaves a massive 60 to 80% that is environmental, it is learned, it is plastic. And we know it changes because of something psychologists call the maturity principle.
Which sounds like a polite way of saying we grow up and stop acting like kids.
Essentially, yes. Grit scores correlate directly with age. They peak in people in their late 60s.
Why is that? Is it just that we get tired of quitting, or do we just get crotchety and stubborn?
It's deeper than that. When you are 20, you are exploring. You are trying on different identities. You're swapping goals like you swap outfits. That's appropriate for that age. But over time, you learn that swapping goals is unfulfilling.
You realize you're just spinning your wheels.
Right. You realize that to get anywhere meaningful, you have to pick a lane and stay in it. You learn that, as the saying goes, necessity is the mother of adaptation.
There is a great story about Bernie No, a headmaster in Seattle, and his daughter. I think every parent will relate to this struggle.
Oh, absolutely. His daughter was chronically late for school. There was the constant battle, nagging, scolding, punishments. Nothing worked. She just could not get out the door.
She lacked the grit to be punctual. She couldn't regulate herself.
Right. Then she got a summer job at American Eagle, the clothing store.
Mm-hmm.
And the manager there didn't care about her feelings. He told her, you are late once, you are fired.
No detention, no stern talk from dad, just real-world consequences.
And overnight, she changed. Because the environment demanded it. She adapted to the standard. She showed up on time every single day. And that adaptation over time stops being something you do under threat and starts being who you are.
So if we want to accelerate that process, if we don't want to wait until our late 60s to be gritty or wait for a boss to threaten to fire us, Duckworth outlines 4 assets, 4 stages of development that grow grit from the inside out.
Right. And they tend to happen in this order. You can't really skip steps here. Asset 1 is interest. You have to actually enjoy the thing.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Asset 2 is practice. You have to try to get better at it every day. Not just show up, but deliberately practice.
Practice. Then what?
Asset 3 is purpose. You have to connect your work to something bigger than yourself, to the well-being of others.
And the last one.
And asset 4 is hope, which is the belief that you can keep going even when it's hard. And hope is really present at all stages.
I want to deep dive into that first one, interest, because I think this is where the follow your passion advice usually goes wrong. We have this Hollywood revelation idea of passion.
The cinematic moment, the lightning bolt.
Yeah. You're sitting in a classroom or you watch a movie about space and suddenly the clouds part, the choir sings, and, I am destined to be an astronaut.
And science says,
Yes.
total nonsense.
Total nonsense.
Passion doesn't arrive like a lightning bolt. It is a messy, slow process. It goes discovery, then development, then deepening. Most people quit because they expect the lightning bolt, and when they don't get it, they think, oh, this must not be my passion.
Look at Julia Child. The woman is the icon of French cooking. But she didn't grow up cooking.
She didn't even cook until she was in her 30s. She grew up eating. She loved to eat. That was the seed. That was the discovery phase.
Right.
Her famous Soul Meunière moment in France, where she ate this fish and it changed her life, wasn't her realizing I will be a famous chef. It was just her realizing, wow, French food is amazing.
It was just a spark. It wasn't a career plan.
Exactly. And it took years of classes, failing, making terrible omelets, and just being interested before it calcified into a career. She followed the interest until it became a passion.
So for the listeners wondering, what is my passion? The advice isn't to sit in a dark room and think harder.
No, you cannot think your way to a passion. You have to do your way there. Interests are triggered by interacting with the world. You have to get messy. You have to try things you might be bad at.
And this has huge implications for parenting, too. Duckworth talks about the early years. How do you raise a gritty kid?
You start with play. This is crucial. Before you get to the grit, the hard practice, the discipline, you have to have the play. You have to foster that initial interest.
Don't be a tiger mom right out of the gate.
Even Amy Chua, the original Tiger Mom, admits this. If you crush a beginner with criticism, you kill the interest before it has roots. Benjamin Bloom's research shows that the best early teachers are the ones who make learning pleasant and rewarding. They aren't the drill sergeants. They are the cheerleaders.
Jeff Bezos' mom is a great example here. She had a nickname, the Captain of Chaos.
I love that. When Bezos was a toddler, he tried to take his crib apart with a screwdriver. Most parents would say, stop that, go to sleep. They would prioritize order.
Absolutely.
She prioritized curiosity. She saw the spark of engineering. She sat down and helped him take it apart. Later, she let him rig alarms in his room to keep his siblings out.
She followed his lead. She didn't force engineering on him.
Same with Will Shortz, the New York Times puzzle master. His mom didn't force him to do puzzles. She gave him a guitar. He ignored it. She gave him a puzzle book. He devoured it. So what did she do? She bought him more puzzle books.
She fed the flame that was already there. She didn't try to light a fire where there was no wood.
That is the key. Autonomy. You have to choose the interest yourself. You can't grit your teeth through a life you didn't choose. If the passion isn't yours, if it's your parents' or society's, you will run out of fuel. You just will.
That is such a relief to hear. You don't have to marry the first interest you date. You explore, you play, and then when you find the thing that sticks, then you apply the discipline.
Exactly. Grit comes after interest, not before. You can't practice until you have something you want to practice.
So let's zoom out. We have gone from the physical torment of the beast barracks to the mathematical reality that effort counts twice. We've looked at how to organize our goals so we aren't just spinning our wheels, and we have debunked the myth that passion is a lightning bolt.
It is a journey, from interest to practice to purpose and finally, hope.
And what I love about this research is how democratic it is. We can't all be geniuses. We can't all be 6'5". We can't all have perfect pitch, but grit is scalable.
It is the great equalizer. And I want to leave the listener with one final thought on identity. Because in the long run, grit isn't just about what you achieve. It is about who you become.
How so?
We talked about the treadmill. If you get back on the treadmill enough times, if you respect the avoid at all costs list enough times, eventually you stop being a person who is trying to be gritty. You just become a gritty person.
It becomes your default setting. It becomes part of your identity.
Exactly. You become the person who doesn't ring the bell. You become the person who finishes. And that identity is worth more than any specific trophy or promotion. Because once you have that identity, you can apply it to anything.
So my question for the listener is this. Look at your calendar. Look at your to-do list. Are those low-level goals serving a compass? Do you even have a compass? Or are you just busy? Because grit without direction is just drudgery. But grit with direction, that is unstoppable.
Check your compass.
Check your compass, folks. And then get back on the treadmill. Thanks for listening to this deep dive into grit. We will see you next time.